There we go. A couple of people afterwards said, could we have a Q&A? We can have a short Q&A now, and then I'll try and make room for one at the end. So does anyone have questions about what you've seen? I had not so much a question out there, but a statement that when dogs correct each other, they are noisy. And so doesn't that mean that we should be noisy when correcting a dog? Doesn't that mean that we should grab a dog and flip him on his back? No. Just because dogs train each other this way doesn't mean to say that humans with superior brain power try and copy that. No, we want to educate dogs what to do. And I'm sure dogs, for example, don't understand the concept of classical conditioning, of representative observation and representative feedback. You know, we do. When I shout, and if I grab, I haven't done yet, okay, I've held the leash and pulled it back and released it, but should I grab, it means what we're doing has failed. And I've asked the dog to pay attention, he's not. We then increase the volume. Now, in terms of prior training, I would teach the dog that increased volume doesn't mean anger. This is the normal thing. When you shout at a dog, they're like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. So first we get rid of that by changing the meaning of volume and tone. And I do it in both ways. So if I really want the dog's attention for a dog I live with, I actually teach the dog, if I lower my voice and say, Rover, sit. That means I'm really going to be watching you and I am going to follow up. I'm not going to raise my voice, but I'm following up. This is the key. You don't have to teach the dog that I'm going to follow up in a bad way. You just have to let the dog know there are some times when I will follow up. And I try and make this as clear as possible to a dog by changing his name, using a formal name, and speaking in a softer voice. And then I always follow up. Okay? So this gives you some good on-demand compliance. But that's a dog that you live with. I can't do that with the dogs. I don't know them. So I have to let them know, I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm going to praise you lots and lots and lots of times. And if I think your owner's out of control, I may step in because my voice will just stop it. At which point now we have to repair any damage that's done and praise and praise and praise and praise and praise the dog for being good. But raising your voice, otherwise, it's not a training technique. It's now, oh my God, we got an emergency, we got to do something. Okay? It's kind of like you're a passenger in a car and a person hasn't seen a stop sign or someone in the stop walk, and so you say stop and they don't decelerate. So this actually happened once with Kelly. I said, stop, 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 stop! You know, I don't want her to think I'm angry with her. I just want you to stop. And in that instant, she stopped, but in the nick of time. So it's not, as I say, a training technique. The training technique part of this is all the boring stuff like watching grass grow. The dogs are sitting here and nothing's happening and we aren't rewarding them. That is the training technique that will eventually have a permanent effect on behavior. Okay? Would never want to put my hand on a dog unless it's an absolute emergency. And that would be something like, oh, the dog's off leash and he's just shot up over here. If I can't stop him with my voice because I don't know the dog and haven't practiced this stuff, I'll just put my hand on him. It's not a training technique. And by that I mean I wouldn't teach a dog to do a recall or to sit or to lie down by touching him. That my rule is pretty standard. When training dogs to do things, you keep your hands off the dog until he's done it. Then you can put your hands all over the dog to massage him, pet him, French kiss him if you like, once he's done it. So hands-on are reward. Okay? But what we're trying to do today is obviously the impossible. We're trying to take a 6-week class which would have pre-training before you get here and then a week's homework between every hour. We're trying to condense that down so it's kind of like the second class is happening now. The dogs are coming out again, but of course they haven't done a week's homework in between. I would hope now they can take what they've learnt in here, the owners, about representative observation, representative feedback, and classical conditioning, seeing the dog, pointing it out when the dog sees it, backing up and super praising that dog and whipping out your tug of war toy that's been amped up as a secondary. That a lot of these dogs in here now, all of them, they are ready to go on the street. The two most reactive are the boxer and the boxer cross. Okay, and I just went and rechecked bite histories, and with the boxer, of course, we don't really have a bite fight record because the dog was stopped twice on leash. There was only that one incident that we discovered this morning that actually isn't in the fight bite record of when the dogs were off leash and they met and they did some chest bumping, and there were no bites. So, it's kind of interesting. What you find is the more fights they've had, usually the more effective this type of stuff is. The dogs don't get as stressed being here. So you have another dog here who's only been attacked, and hasn't actually initiated a fight. So again, what we're missing here is this should take 6 weeks, and you have a week's homework before you start, the prior training. Teach your dog sit, teach him come for and sit, teach him to walk on a loose leash, teach him to vocalize on cue. So when you say sit, you always say sit and shush. So what happens is after about 12 repetitions, when you say sit, the dog knows it means sit and shush because you always say sit and shush. So one word now sits the dog looking at you and he's quiet. Okay, so that's the prior training before we get there. Then after each week, learning the skills, we have a week to practice on the street. And we want to and when we do that, it's a lot easier than here. So I would say, all right, for all of you, don't think your goal is to train your dog up so he can go back in the dog park again. Now, that may indeed happen, with some dogs, but no, your goal should be that you can walk your dog again, and you can walk him on a loose leash, and when you see other dogs, you back up, and he sits and looks at you, and they go by, and you praise him, the classical conditioning routine. Number 2, for some of the dogs, we'd like to get them playing again. With whom? With an inner core, a core group, I call it, of friends. Like 1, 2, 3, 4 dogs, your friends' dogs, that your dog's going to see on a regular basis. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to do all of your classical conditioning with, say, those 3 or 4 dogs. Much easier than in here. So like a great classical conditioning routine is your friends come to your house with their dogs, and they spread out, 3 of them, and they walk the block counterclockwise. You go clockwise. That means for a long time, the whole length of the block, you can't see another dog. And then it comes around the corner. And so you stop and wait for it to happen. That person knows, though, if there's any reaction, they stop. They don't close the distance. So you've got a lot of times when there's no dogs in sight, but because we have 4 sides to the block and 3 dogs, now a dog appears. If you can walk towards him, that's cool, because he's walking towards you. When they get close, I like the stimulus dog to stop. Okay, because you know these people. So they aren't closing the distance, you are closing the distance at your own space. Then you go past that dog, then the next one's coming. You do 1 lap, that's the hardest lap. You're going to do 5 laps around the block. You're going to do 15 pass-bys. But it's with the same 3 dogs. And the idea is to keep working with these dogs. Oh, and the only food the dog gets is in this exercise. So you don't hand feed one at a time. We're feeding real kibble now, and it can be a handful at a time, and of course your dog needn't be muzzled. And so what he's learning is, I eat out there, walking the block, when I meet these 3 dogs, which we hope eventually will become your dog's friends. A dog can have a really nice life with just 3 friends. I mean, think humans. I mean, I know a lot of people who, they don't have that many friends. But it's a real close friendship, and they're the people you talk to when you're upset and depressed and what have you. And the same with your dog. If there's one reaction with another dog that just comes around the corner, you didn't know he's there, you go back to your core group again. always to build your dog's confidence up, okay? So these are the goals, realistic goals. Now, some dogs will surprise you. I mean, I've seen some dogs, but bam, we just do some stuff, and before we know it, they're playing again. And then, of course, if you're giving the right feedback, and you're praising them like you can't believe when they're playing, we can get off and running again, and you may get the dog out there to have his life back that he had when he was 5 and 6 months old. So be realistic with the goals. But do be aware that the big bang for your buck of training that you get, say, well, in this room or on the block, is when your dog is not reacting. Not reacting. Everybody who's going to watch this video will pay attention to when the dogs go off and what happens. Well, when the dogs go off, it's usually a disaster. Okay? That's where I want you to get it right. Stop them. But before you stop them, you should have praised them 20, 30 times for not reacting. Then stop them. Use your voice, not your hands. Don't creep down the leash. Then when they stop reacting, praise them another 20 times. Then you will get somewhere as each week goes by to each week, and so on and so on and so on. Got it? Okay, let's take a couple of questions if we have any. If not, we will bring out our dogs again. Yes?
Collars versus harnesses, there's a pretty good combination out here.
I beg your pardon?
Collars versus harnesses when training.
I like collars. We got a lot of weird stuff on the dogs here, and I should say this into the camera because people will watch this and they go crazy. Do you realize what that dog was wearing? Yeah. And so you saw me disconnect one pinch collar to a buckle collar. I like buckle collars, or I like a martingale. I don't like halters. I don't like harnesses. Why don't I like halters? With a reactive dog, they're downright dangerous. Yes, they give you that purchase. You get the mechanical advantage, but the danger is that your dog's lunging, gets 6 feet, and it whips his head round. So I really don't like halters with a reactive dog. Harnesses, what shall I say? Well, that's what we used to use to train our Malamutes to pull sleds. You put them in a harness and off they go. Even a no-pull harness, I've seen dogs saying, I love this, I really like it attached to, my back or what have you. And we're getting to paraphernalia. And I find the more complicated the halter or the harness, the less likely the owner will learn to use their voice and give the appropriate feedback. People are so gizmo-oriented in training. I remember asking Karen Pryor a year and a half ago, and I said, what do you think made clicker training take off like that? Given that the present climate then was very successful lure reward training. And she said, the clicker. You see, I should have had a luring gizmo, like a luring stick, or something. It's very difficult to sell information without a gizmo. You need a little red book, or you need a gizmo, a piece of equipment, and then people just flock to it like you can't believe because they think the solution is the gizmo. It's kind of like in my puppy books, when I say errorless house training, when you're at home, have the puppy, when you're away from home, puppy long-term confinement with a toilet in it. When you're at home, puppy in the crate as a prediction tool. That's what the crate is. So every hour on the hour, you can say, let's go pee, snap him on leash, run to the toilet, stand still. And when the puppy pees, give him 3 treats. Ichi-ni-san, 3 treats. People do that. What won't they do? When your puppy pees, tell him he's done the most wonderful and glorious thing. Celebrate, he's done the right thing in the right place at the right time. When your puppy pees, give him a bunch of treats. They won't do it. But if you say give 3 treats, this is the weirdest thing. I've seen a guy leave puppy class and then shout through the window, honey, do you have another treat? I've only got 2. As if the magic is the number 3. You see? And a lot of people think the magic is the gizmo. And of course, the most shocking example of this, of course, is the shock collar. They think that is the secret. No! If you can't train a recall on your hunting dog, you can put you still won't have it with a shock collar on, because you don't know how to train. It's not the equipment, it's the The brain that's operating the thumb on the button. That's the deal. But people think the solution is this piece of equipment. So I am really down on equipment. And I mean, if I were doing this my way, well, it would start puppy 1, off leash, naked dog training. I would let you have treats in your hand probably for 15 minutes, and then you put them on the table. They're phased out of your hand as a reward. If you want to, as a lure, if you want to use it as a reward, you say, "Good boy, that's worth a treat. Come over here, that's really worth a treat. Let's take one of Bodie's treats, shall we? They're tastier, you can have it." But naked dog training. I want you to learn how to control your dog with what you have, which is your voice, essentially. If the dog is 5 feet from you, unless you've got a hand like Inspector Gadget, you can't grab him. That's why I tell people, don't grab your dog. Today, there's 2 reasons. One, if you put your hands on the dog, if you tighten that leash, you're amping your dog up. But number 2, if you resort to grabbing the dog, you'll never have him off leash, because you haven't learnt the off-leash skills. The off-leash skills are verbal control, verbal instructions, verbal commands, verbal requests, call them what you like, and then verbal feedback. And if you do touch a dog in the process of training, you've taken a pretty simple 1-step process, train the puppy off leash in the play session, and you've turned it into a 2-step process. The first bit takes no time at all. Getting the dog to mind when he's on leash or within arm's reach. And we see it on the telly. And it's presented as if now the dog is trained. He's not trained. He's just learnt to mind when you can grab him. But what does he do when he's 7 feet from you? And so that's what I like to see. The dog, you'll see it more tomorrow when I can just say, let's let the dogs off leash. It's not like today where, it's coming, but I'm going to ask the owners, do you want to have a go with your dogs off leash now? But that's up to you. I'm not going to choose them for you. Okay, at that point, they'll still be muzzled. So for those of you, I've let the owners take the muzzles off because they're on leash, the muzzles go back on again. Okay? And especially if I don't know. So like with the little boxer here, I don't know what would happen if he made contact. It was nice to hear that once they went together and bumped chests, that's a good sign. But I'm not, too happy about it. So, yeah, I hate gizmos. I use food. It's absolutely essential for temperament stuff. If you're classically conditioning dogs to like people, there ain't no other way. If we take kibble and we amp it up as a secondary, sit, eat the kibble on the bed. Sit, eat the kibble, tummy rub, sit, eat the kibble, get the tennis ball, sit, eat the kibble, sniff at other dogs, rear.
There's a glass company that...
End. I was saying, was that my rental car? Okay. Yes, and then we can give kibble to men or children to toss to the dog. So I don't know any other way to do this classical conditioning there, and so food is mandatory forever, for life. But in teaching manners, no, I use food to start the dog off because most people don't have good affect and they can't praise. They can't say thank you. You've heard the level of it here. I mean, compare what you hear from the people to what you hear from me. Like when I take hold of Bodie, it's like, oh, he's a good boy, good dog. It's okay, there's a good boy, good dog. Hey, good boy, there's a good dog. It's a running commentary. Praise, 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 praise. And sometimes, oh, there's a good boy. Yes, really want to let him know that's cool. A lot of people simply cannot do that. They just can't do it. That is actually really scary. Anyone who has a car outside, I suggest you run out and check now. Okay, next question. Who is next? Yes.
I was going to ask the same thing. Oh, sorry.
Good, okay, same thing.
About the pinch collar, because I know that you took it off, or you unclipped Bodie's. I had one on Fiona earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Should I not be using that? Or?
I wouldn't use it because what's happening is he lunges and the pinch, or let's put it this way, metal prongs going into his neck, teach him lunging is wrong, but what's it associated with? Right at the point of impact with the other dog. And so I wouldn't use a pinch collar, I wouldn't use a shock collar in situations like this. The dogs have got enough bad stuff when they react. And it can be as simple as this, that you have a sensitive dog, like the Pits. Physically, they're indestructible, but mentally, they're so sensitive to their owners. And when you go, I've seen dogs just go flat. I mean, like Dune, American Bulldog. If Kelly's working him and she shows any sign of exasperation, he just lies down, puts his chin on the ground, says, then I won't do anything. And so what happens is the dog's so associated with, the owner getting upset, the owner getting frustrated, the owner freaking out, the owner sweating and smelling like Pittsburgh from 100 miles away, and the owner frantic and shouting. I don't want to add to it. The only thing I would add to that is my voice, and say this is where a lot of people would disagree with me there. A lot of people. It's like, well, you're frightening the dog. Well, the question then comes, did we stop the lunge? Yeah, and I did it with my voice, and then that becomes even more miraculous when the dog's off leash, because nothing else works then apart from a shock collar. But we know how great people's timing is, don't we? You know the old thing with clickers. I say when I touch my head, go click. Click, 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 click. I mean, what was she doing? Well, you do that with a shock collar. What you're doing is shocking the dog for releasing. And one mistake like that, and you've done so much damage to the training. I just wouldn't use it, period. It's too much. It's like giving a scalpel to someone who's drunk. It's too a refined piece of equipment, to give to someone who doesn't know how to train. Because any margin of error and you cause an enormous amount of damage. And so, if you review this tape again, I want you to listen to my timing, or you look at the fighting DVD. Yeah, I'm shouting, I didn't want to, and there we couldn't even do the classical conditioning like we're doing here. I couldn't make friends with the dogs, it's hurry, 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 because you're being filmed. You get bullied by film crews. Well, that was the second to last time I was bullied by a film crew, and after that I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm doing it my way. You don't want to film it, then don't film it. I don't care. But we're going to train the dogs the way I would like to. I'm not going to rush. So, next question with 3. Yes.